country.
Right. That brings to the part of the controversy about this genetically modified organism or whatever, the introduction, because those that are against it actually are agitating the fact that the federal government is planning to bring in some American companies, to come and produce these things, whereas we have our own companies that can actually, do that, like the NABDA. That's the National Biotechnology Development Agency, and of course, the International Institute of Tropical Agriculture in Ibadan. And for their argument is that if you have to, allow the foreign companies come in to do that, and then Nigeria now adopts this genetically modified whatever, you're going to send these people out of business. Okay. Because even the companies in question, they are known for it. Actually. So that's part of their own agitation. So why can't we actually allow, since we have it here, why can't we actually get this done here?
Good. I would like to clarify this. The two organizations you mentioned, IITA and the other one, they are specifically research. They have the infrastructure, but they don't have the facility to commercialize it. Pioneer Seeds is an American seed company, used to be in Nigeria, moved on, and now it's Premier Seed. Now, in the country presently, we don't have good seeds on a commercial scale. We don't have seeds that will compete favorably with the seed companies in other developing countries or developed countries. So I believe the reason why the ministry is planning to bring in this organization is because they have the funds and they have the technology. However, I would suggest that it should not be, okay, bring them in solely to dish it out to us. There should be regulation and protecting the interest of Nigerians, and probably also get smaller players in the industry to work along, and it should not be only one giant is coming and the giant is coming to dish out.
It dominates.
Yes. So that's what I think there should be a balance.
All right. Now, when we talk about GMOs, genetically modified crops, when we have such crops, for instance, you have corn, you have apple, watermelon. In the U.S. that you mentioned, when you eat their corn, it's usually very sweet, and it's actually genetically modified. So I kind of wonder, what happens to our fertilizer if we have to get this introduced?
Okay, now let me first say this. The corn that is very sweet is a variety, not necessarily genetically modified. It's called sweet corn. There's a difference between sweet corn and field corn. In Nigeria, what we eat mostly is field corn. In developed countries, it's used in making livestock and animal feed. It's not consumed. It's the sweet corn that they consumed. However, there are a lot of field corn genetically modified and sweet corn genetically modified. So that's about that. You see, like what I said, there needs to be, the ministry needs to educate, come up with awareness. Now, genetically modified crops is not like a miracle crop. It needs fertilizer to grow.
Okay.
It still needs some herbicides to grow. It still needs everything the normal crop will use in growing. It's in the rain, it needs fertilizer, it needs some insecticides, and some don't require insecticides. So,
well, those insecticides, they are chemicals.
They are chemicals, yes. And we still use them. If you're producing corn hybridly in Nigeria, you use insecticides. The thing is, with the genetically modified crops, depending on the variety, there are varieties that you don't need to use chemicals, insecticides to kill insects. The insects, the crop is already developed to resist those insects. So, but there are some that you still need to spray them. So it has different types of crops, different types of varieties.
Right. Right. You just mentioned, you talked about the exchange program that went for, in the U.S. What is your take home from that?
Well, the program is called U.S. Foreign Policy and Food Security. And we're privileged to have like 18 different appointments moving around. Now, what I experienced there is that Nigeria is going through series of phases that if we don't take care, we might get into a situation where we'll have droughts and we will not have enough food readily available. Because like in California now, across the board, California plants over 28 million acres of food crops, vegetables and co. But the drought gradually coming in, like we've been seeing droughts coming into Nigeria. The rains are not coming when it should. We're having excessive sun intensity. This morning it was very cold and cold. So it's gradually coming. So I was privileged, or we were privileged to see what is likely to come, you know, if we don't begin to focus on food security. And there are two things. Food security and food inequality, they're different. Food security has to do with being available and being accessible. Inequality is not having it equally. Like you will have access to some food, I won't have access to some food. So coming back, the reality of we can be in this situation, and if we're in this situation, what do we do? So we need to begin to focus now on food security. What do we have to do?
All right. You were talking about the need for us to do something towards achieving food security. And now that the minister is talking about biotechnology, genetically modified, whatever, how can we achieve food security using these genetically modified organisms?
One, irrigation farming is very crucial, because even with the genetically modified crops, the ones that are drought resistant, it still needs a measure of water at different stages. So we need to pay attention to different types of irrigation system. One, most of the irrigation we have is still sprinkler, which wastes a lot of water. And we need to begin to look at what you call drip irrigation, which only gives water to the root of crops. Apart from that, we need to take agriculture back to schools. You know, people, you may ask, what's the relevance of that? Which is, at every level, we need to begin to get people more interested in farming at secondary school level, at primary school level. And food security has to also do with like feeding programs. Some states have embarked on feeding programs. We need to be able to take care of the youths coming to say, okay, this is the protein required, and you give it to them. Take, for instance, there's a maize called quality protein maize. It's high in lysine and tryptophan. Now, this maize is a natural maize. It's also produced here. Now, if we begin to introduce those as meals, it will reduce the cost of feeding will be reduced. So we need to begin to embark on a commercial agricultural projects now, which is to involve the youths and not necessarily only big companies. There's one thing the minister is talking about, which is agribusiness, seeing agriculture as a business and not as a developmental project. I quite agree with that. However, we can't depend solely on the commercial people to produce. So we still need the small scale farmers, the rural scale farmers, to also begin to expand what they are doing. So if you're doing 4 acres before, the rural farmers should now even be able to do 10 acres with equipment. So we need to begin to clear more lands. We need to pay attention to cultural practices. And we need to even encourage the rural farmers to do their organic farming, as against bringing only what will make them produce more. So we need across board now to get more people into processing, because what is being produced is wasting. So more people need to get into small scale processing, not commercial scale. Why do I say small scale? Because if there's a challenge on the commercial infrastructure, it takes a long time to fix those problems. But if they are small scale and medium scale, you can actually get more done. You get more people employed.
Right. Now, so which attracts premium price, organic or GMO?
I think the good side of GMO now is that as GMO is coming in, even in the developed countries, the people who want organic, they are paying 3 times, 5 times the price for organic. So the organic farmer today is making more before the advent of GMO introduction. So, but presently GM cost more. But in developed countries where like specific types of maize is produced for ethanol or biofuel, GM products, is also selling. So it depends on the but what's it called? Organic products is making more money than GM, but GM is more widely accepted, and the challenges of that is reduced. So if you look at the cost of production, now it's about the same, and it just depends on preference.
All right. Now we have presently biosafety bill before the National Assembly. So are you in support that this bill should actually be passed into law?
Good, with a clause. I'm in support of it, and the clause is we need to put the infrastructure required to make the bill work. It's different. It's a different scenario if it's passed. Good. Implementation is what we need, not the bill being passed.
Right. Thank you very much, Mr. African Farmer Mogaji.
You.
It's been a wonderful conversation.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, I've been speaking to African Farmer Mogaji. He is an agric information broker and consultant, and we've been looking at the issue of the genetically modified organism, the controversy surrounding that issue, biotechnology, GMOs, and using them to achieve food security in Nigeria. And of course, he says that there isn't anything wrong with GMO. It's something we can actually do, but there is need for the government to put functioning structure to actually support this GMO. And once that is done, Nigeria is good to go. Well, it's on that note that we draw the curtain on today's edition of the program. And of course, for the week, thank you for being part of the program. We hope